All right, so now let's continue on and talk about investing in innovation. All right. So now when we think about innovation, one of the problems I think that uh, plagues individuals is the idea that somehow innovation is going to stop, right? It's just going to run into a brick wall. And that's not really what we see. That's not really reality when we look back and we look back over the last 200-300 years when we began with this first wave, this really big industrial revolution, which begins in Europe, and it just begins to sweep the world, right? So you have the first industrial revolution. And then, of course, by the time you have the second wave in the 1800s, you have steam power and railroads and steel, cotton, all of these innovations occurring within a few decades of each other and kind of building upon each other, right? And that's really what this is showing you here. This is the knowledge doubling curve. Knowledge right now is actually doubling about every 12 to 13 months, according to some statistics. We'll look at a few more things about that topic in just a minute. But the fact that knowledge is exploding the way that it is literally just catapulting us further and further towards even more innovation. Think about in the 1880s, where electricity was very first time it was really used was at the very first time electricity was used on a mass scale was, I believe, at the State Fair in Paris, or the World's Fair in Paris. And they used electricity to light up the entire fair. And many people during the time thought it was a fad. They thought, man, this is interesting, but this won't last. This is too expensive, or it's just a thing that's neat. But well, they had no idea. Many people didn't have any idea that this would soon, just be everywhere. Electricity would become extremely important to everything, and it would inform so many different sectors. I mean, think about every sector now that has been impacted by electricity. I mean, are there any sectors that don't use electricity? I mean, no, of course not. So electricity was extremely disruptive whenever it was harnessed. And we really saw that in the late 1800s, but then especially in the beginning of the 1900s. The internal combustion engine was also invented during this time frame in that wave. Then you have the fourth wave, where you have the discovery of petrochemicals, all this oil that's laying underneath the ground, that people didn't realize they could use that. They were using whale oil. They were used for lanterns, of course, in Europe. They were using other types of oil. But this petrochemicals, the idea of drilling into the ground and pulling up oil and then, refining that oil and using it for all manner of purposes, was just far off. And now, of course, we live in this world, which is now we're actually living towards the perhaps what might be described as the dusk or the twilight of the petrochemicals age, as we move into renewables and things of this nature. Now, it's not going to die immediately, of course. These things have a tendency to slowly morph into whatever the new innovation is. And so anyway, you can just think about it. I mean, we weren't even on the moon until, just a few decades ago. Really weren't even in space until just a few decades ago. So everything's kind of just, accelerating. And we can all tell it. We can all see it. We can all sense it. Now, here is, I think, a really helpful chart from ARK Invest. ARK Invest, and this is what it says here at the top. It says, in the late 19th century, 3 innovation platforms evolved at the same time and changed the way the world worked. Thanks to the introduction of the telephone, automobile, and electricity, the world's productivity exploded as costs dropped, unleashing demand across sectors. Today, we believe the global economy is undergoing the largest technological transformation in history, thanks to 5 innovation platforms evolving at the same time, right? So this is a helpful chart because you can see here that the steam engine in its context, railways in their context, the industry or the internal combustion engine, and then you have the telephone and automobile and electricity all kind of coming together quickly right before World War I. And then, of course, we move into the wartime where a lot of the innovation was really used for military purposes, right? And then on the backside of World War II, a lot of the Pentagon research and DARPA research and all of this began to show up back in the private industries. That's where the internet came from, of course. It was a military invention. So many of the things that we enjoy today were actually created by military scientists or by the Pentagon. It's really quite ironic how many things that we actually have because of their research. Computers, I was just thinking about this the other day, about how back in the 90s, I had an old, really big, compact computer. And I thought I was, the stuff. I mean, back in 1990, the mid-1990s, computers were enormous. You remember this. The internet was extremely slow, but it was a thing. And in 1995, 96, 97, right in there, was whenever I was really, getting into computers a lot. And started my own website like in 1997, 1998. Saw so many changes. Of course, all of us have seen these incredible changes in the internet. So the internet was, and it went through many evolutions. We heard about Web 1.0. That's where people were sending emails and, and using, lists and things like that. And then you have Web 2.0, which is kind of where we are, where we have been, which is much more powered by, social media and video and all of this. But then we're moving into Web 3.0. And that's really informed by the blockchain. And it's really accelerating in a way that's exciting, but also very confusing. It's difficult to know how to really get your arms around what's happening. We're living right through it. Now, notice what ARK is saying here. It says that you have all of these key technologies all kind of bursting onto the scene at once, right? So you have, as you can see here, blockchain technology, right? Blockchain technology up here. This, of course, has been revolutionary. It's so revolutionary that the Federal Reserve, which has been doing the money the way that it does money, for over 100 years, and of course the fiat currency systems and the fractional reserve banking and all of the stuff that we see today, all the modern monetary systems, these have been in place, albeit improving, for the last 4 centuries or so. And so to see a white paper about Bitcoin and this blockchain technology, and to hear everybody say, oh, no, that's nothing, right? Many people said, oh, this is nothing. And then 10 years later, actually, no, 5 years later, China upends the whole system and launches its own digital currency. Or they began investigating it. They actually launched it, last year. But they began investigating their own digital currency back in 2014. The United States also now, putting out that paper. The Fed is working with MIT. The Boston Fed is working with MIT. They're trying to, come up with some sort of, doable digital dollar. Anyone who thinks that blockchain is a fad doesn't know what's happening. They're confused. And it's okay, because it's understandable why someone would be confused right now. It's a very confusing time. However, it just must be said, anyone who thinks that blockchain is just not here to stay doesn't know what's going on. They don't know where they are. It's the same thing with robotics. People who think the robotics are going to go away because there's just not a demand for that have no idea what's going on, right? Energy storage is a massive space. This is enormous. This is what we have been waiting for so long. Battery storage, electric vehicles, autonomous mobility, right? So all of these things with energy storage are empowering. It's artificial intelligence, where you have these neural networks, brain implants, right? Mobile connected devices, cloud computing, all of these incredible technologies converging at the same time. Genome sequencing. I mean, this is the stuff of, science fiction, where you have gene editing, the CRISPR technology, immunotherapy, which is just simply incredible, CAR T cells, where they're actually creating cells in your body, where they're actually augmenting them and editing them and allowing your own cells to destroy, cancer cells in your body. I mean, the DNA sequencing, the genome sequencing, all of this is just simply incredible, what we're living through. We have the fintech revolution and all of this. And we can probably think of other things as well. Now, all of this, as I stated, can be a little overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. And we're living through that time where everything is very, unsettling. And where is everything going, right? What are we going to see in the next 10 years? If we go back 10 years, we wouldn't believe what we would have saw, now. So where are we going to be 10, 20 years from now? So it doesn't really matter what happens to the global economy because innovation will continue.